Hello guys, welcome to another edition of The Game Changer. I am indeed your host with the most, the man who cannot be denied, Nate the effing Great. You know, it goes without saying that I really can't live life without two main things: professional wrestling and movies. I've definitely gone on length to talk about my love for professional wrestling as well as my fascination and passion for movies, acting, actors, etc., etc., and so forth. Obviously, next month I will be talking more about the professional wrestling aspect of it and some of the great things that happened here in 2018. But I thought that I would actually spend this final week of November, it's actually the day after Thanksgiving as I'm recording this. For those of you that are listening in, happy belated Turkey Day, and also hopefully you've gotten your fill of turkey and whatever else you may have also had. So, obviously, I'll be talking about the movie aspect. I've gone and I've seen about 40 different movies this year alone, and that is actually a personal record for me. So, am I going to be able to break that record going into next year? Well, we'll see, because there's just a lot of issues. I mean, with work and with other things that are going on, it's kind of hard for me to do that kind of deal. And I also try to do podcasting as much as I can to discuss that. So I thought it would be only fair that I talk about movies, but I'd also talk about, out of them, the best and worst of the movies here in 2018. Now, obviously, there's still some movies going into December, movies such as Robin Hood, such as Aquaman, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Once Upon a Deadpool. Oh God, why is this still even a thing? Ugh. There is still quite a bit of movies going into the final year, but I think that I'm at the point right now where I can actually talk about the majority of this year, my thoughts about it, as well as some of the movies that have definitely stood out, some that have kind of faded away into a distance, also some that have definitely really made me continue to be passionate about movies, but also some that have definitely made me question a lot of different decisions that people have made. So let's get right into it, guys. It's going to be a long list for a lot of the good movies that happened this year, so I'm just going to right off the bat and talk about the worst movies. So these are, subjectively, my top 10 worst movies this year of 2018. And we're starting off at number 10, The Predator. This was a movie that just, it had some good moments. Like I said, Keegan-Michael Key's character, along with his co-star, definitely had a pretty good relationship. And it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, this is not actually a bad thing. It's actually probably one of the highlights of the movie. Some of the action sequences were really good. But the lead characters just really annoyed the hell out of me. It was kind of like, I don't actually care too much about what's going on. And then there were some different motivations, different deals that were going on. The final deal where they showed the anti-predator suit, I guess it's called, just it irked me. It was just not one of those things I really enjoyed. It was hard to really get into the movie sometimes because maybe there was some explanation where it made absolutely no sense, or it was just something that really irked me. It was really hard for me to enjoy this movie. I really cannot say that it's one of my favorites of this year. Number 9, we have Red Sparrow. So right off the bat, I believe that this was one of the first few movies of the year that I kind of looked at and I thought to myself, well, this was something. I mean, it features Jennifer Lawrence. What more can I really say about that other than the fact that it's Jennifer Lawrence? She's one of those women that deserves so much, and honestly, she was indeed the highlight of this. The rest of the film was either too long, and I just had a hard time really getting into the story, or it just... This was one of those movies that I just had very little interest for me. I had a hard time getting into it, and it just felt like, some spots of the movie were pretty well paced, but then there were others where it was just like, yes, it just dragged. And it always sucks to see that, because some of it was too predictable, or some of it was just dragging on for really long, and it just made absolutely no sense. Like I said, Jennifer Lawrence is the highlight of this movie. Other than that, not much I can really say good about this movie. Number 8, ironically enough, is Ocean's 8. I didn't know what to really think about when I came into this movie. Obviously, it's based off of the other Ocean movies, but it features women. That's not my issue with it. The issue with it is just that a lot of the characters just... It felt more of like a comedy than it should have been. And obviously, not knowing too much of the background of what the Ocean movies were, I don't think the Ocean movies were really comedy based. I figured that maybe they should be more of a serious tone, and honestly, if they did that for this movie, it would have been good. But I felt like there was just a little too much comedy in here, as well as just, I don't know, some of the characters, they just don't feel like they meshed well together. I mean, of course, you had Cate Blanchett, Sandra Bullock, Anne Hathaway, and so many other great actresses in here, but it's just one of those stories that I just could not get into again. And that's always the hardest part, is finding reasons to get into the movie. And again, just the story about these women basically going after a heist, going after this diamond jewel. It's like, hey, it's cool, but at the same time, I don't feel too invested in this movie. I don't know, it was just really weird, and I just did not like it. Number 7, 50 Shades Freed. A lot of people might be surprised to see that this is not in my top 5. There is a reason for that. But I will say this. I've seen all 3 of these movies. I've seen the first 50 Shades, which was the bar setter, let's face it. The second one, 50 Shades Darker, I think definitely was better than the first one, in my opinion, because of the fact that it actually did have a bit of a story to it. There was more character development. This third one, it felt like everything was just thrown out of there. It was just like, oh, well, we have a likable character in Dakota Johnson. That's kind of thrown out in this movie. Anastasia's not exactly that much likable. She's trying to show you, like, independence. She's doing this. It's just really not likable. And I'm not a fan of the Christian actor, the guy who plays Christian, not that he's a Christian. I don't know. But the guy who plays Christian, I just don't like him. I really don't. And this was just one of those movies where it was like the final nail in the coffin, where it's like, yep, not a fan of him. I don't care. Storyline is sloppy. Nothing really seems original anymore. It just really was one of those movies that was so hard to get through. And, I mean, I don't know. It just was one of those movies that I just had a hard time enjoying. It just was very hard to get into. I mean, with the ending, you have, Anastasia and Christian, they have their kid, and it seems like they had another one on the way. It was just one of those things where, like, there should be a happy moment, but it meant nothing. I'm sorry. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, this should be a nice, great deal. You have a family thing here going on, and you should care, but I just don't. I really didn't. It just made no sense to me. Alright, number 6. The First Purge. So, obviously this is supposed to be the first one. This is supposed to be the prequel. I was expecting more things out of it. I felt like this was just half-assed. I don't know why. It may have been the fact that the characters were just not that relatable. They were not that likable. Maybe there was a character that I was supposed to be like, oh, he's in this Purge, or oh, he's in this Purge. But this was just one of those movies where it was a poor excuse to set up for the Purge TV series that happened on the USA Network. And I will actually do a review of them hopefully before the year is over. I definitely do need to watch them. I have them on DVR right now. But like I said, the characters I just didn't really care for too much. The villains were just kind of what you would expect. It's kind of one of those things where you're more afraid of the government doing something like this. And just, I liked the second one, which was, I think, Purge Anarchy, and then Purge Independent? No, not Independence Day. Was it Election Day? Something like that. The second and the third Purge movies were great. They were absolutely great. The first one was a hit and miss. this first Purge movie just really hit, again, it's one of those movies that it's set up to promote a TV series, and that's just stupid. If you were to go in to do that, you might as well just had it as a movie on the USA Network or something like that. Don't waste time putting that on the big screen. It made absolutely no sense. Just don't. Alright, so now we are on to the top 5 worst movies that I've seen this year. And at number 5, we have The Darkest Minds. Upon seeing the trailers, I looked at this and I thought, okay, this could actually be a little bit of a nice story. It kind of has a little bit of like a, I don't know, maybe like a Twilight deal to it, but not without the vampires and the cheesiness that happened there. It had all the cheesiness. There was just some cheesy moments in this movie. It had moments where they don't really explain too much about these. There's just not too much that can be, said about some of these characters. And then the ending, oh my gosh, the ending, it ends so abruptly. And this is supposed to be a movie where it's supposed to be a trilogy. It just was a really horrible first step for the direction of this trilogy, if that is the case. I just didn't like the fact that some of these characters were not getting more developed. I mean, it's Rue from The Hunger Games, who was probably one of the saddest deaths of that entire franchise. And it's one of those things where it's like, I just don't care. It's another one of those movies where I'm just like, I don't really care that much about a lot of these characters. I think that's really what it boils down to when it comes to top 5, is that these characters are either unrelatable or I just don't care about them at all. And this was one of those first examples where it's like, there's a couple characters here and there where it's like, okay, I can get this. I can understand why this person did this. But then there was some where it's just like, I just really don't care. I really do not care. Speaking of not caring, that brings me to number 4, Happy Time Murders. This was a movie that definitely should not have been on the big screen. I watched it and I literally fell asleep during halfway through it. And then I looked at the plot on Wikipedia and literally I found, I really didn't miss anything. I mean, it's an adult version of Sesame Street. A lot of people were thinking, it's going to be good. I mean, it features, oh gosh, what's her name? Melissa McCarthy. And, she's funny. She is funny. I'm not going to deny that. But this was not one of those movies that really brought the comedy that we liked about her. It was just one of those things where it was like, okay, it's puppets, and you add Melissa McCarthy in it, and then you had all these weird deals. It just, there's so many jokes that either go too long or they really miss the ballpark. It's really dumb, and oh my gosh, I mean, people are going to see who the villain is halfway through it. It's one of those things where it's like, oh great, this is one of the things. And it doesn't help the fact that I fell asleep halfway through it, so it just bored me that much. It really just did not keep my interest at all. I really did not enjoy this movie. I didn't care for that much for this movie. I don't need to see a sequel of this movie, but unfortunately, if they do, I'm probably going to end up seeing it. Just like The Secret Life of Pets 2. Oh God, I forgot that was a thing. And we're not even out of the woods yet. With number 3, Strangers Pray at Night. Okay. First Strangers movie was actually pretty good. I liked the mystique of these killers that just have a mask, they can talk, but you never really get the motivation as to why they're killing. That's one of the more scarier things, as they had that victim asking the question, why are you doing this? And they never really give a straight answer. It was really cool. I liked it. So when they had the second one come out, it's kind of like, okay, this might be good. It might be a really good deal. I mean, it sets place in a trailer park. Okay, I mean, that's fine. How are the characters? Oh, well, basically the parents are trying to get rid of the kids so that basically they can go do some hanky-panky. Oh, well, I mean, the kids must be... Nope, kids are usually either spoiled or they're just not likable at all. But I mean, the killers... Well, I mean, there's one scene where a killer basically kills the dad after he gets hit with the truck, and he basically sets a radio to it to like a happy-go-lucky song. That sounds interesting. I mean, it could have worked, but just... Well, this movie was a train wreck. Let's face it. There's nothing I could say that is a redeeming quality for this movie. My God, can you believe how they just took an axe on this movie and they just slammed it hard and just said, yeah, we're not doing anything new and original with it. I thought it would be pretty cool, but this is one of those movies where it's like, wow, this makes me really appreciate Happy Death Day. Because that movie was awesome. That movie had comedy to it, but it also had a really compelling storyline to it. This one, it has no storyline, no likable characters, nothing really good about it, except for the fact that some guy just decides, hey, before I kill you, I want you to enjoy this nice little music deal. Okay. And then there's a point where they're in a hospital deal, and all you hear is the noises outside the room. Okay, so we're possibly getting a sequel. No, I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want a third one. Please, God, no. We're at number 2, which is Truth or Dare. Ugh. Another movie that infuriates me more than number 1. This was one of those movies that I just... Again, they have something. You have something good. I mean, basically, it's a almost like demonic version of Truth or Dare. Either you tell the truth or you do the dare. If you fail either one of them, then you end up dead. I mean, that's actually a pretty good concept. It actually was one of those things where I thought, okay, this actually looks kind of cool. I mean, granted, it has some of that cheesy, smiley gimmick deal, which made more sense if they would have had like a smiley-faced killer, like an emoji killer or something like that. That would have made more sense. But they just, it was very hard. It's very hard to get through this movie. And the fact of the matter is that, again, these characters are not likable. I was literally at the point where I was like, I kind of want all these characters dead. The only one I felt like sympathy for was the... I'm trying to think of the actor. I'm trying to think of his name. This kid who basically has to admit to his dad that he's coming out of the closet, that he's gay. And I kind of felt for him. I felt like I sympathetic for him, and they ended up killing him off. And I'm like, well, you just killed off the last bit of interest I had in this movie. And how do they end the freaking movie? Well, basically they decided to use YouTube to spread this whole Truth or Dare deal throughout the entire world, because instead of basically making a sacrifice and saying, hey, we'll just, end it with the two of us, no, we're going to spread it across the world. We're going to make other people suffer, because then that way we can still live longer. Are you kidding me? That is the stupidest way to end a movie. That is the stupidest thing you could do as a character. That is the stupidest... so much stupid that a whole list of Jericho needs to be based on Truth or Dare. That is how bad this movie is. It just... why was this created? And that's one of the reasons why I'm always so hesitant with Blumhouse deals. There's so far been one Blumhouse movie that I've seen this year that I am happy to see, and this was not one of them. This was one that I was literally thinking, why was this a thing? Why was this created? Why didn't somebody take it and throw it into a dumpster fire? Because that is exactly where it needed to go. Before I get into the final one, I will be talking about a dishonorable mention on here, and that was The Nun. Maybe it's because of the fact that I did not get a chance to see The Conjuring or Conjuring Part 2, but I just had a hard time really getting into this movie. I don't hate this movie, but I'm not a big fan of it. It just didn't have the jump scares. It didn't have any characters that I was just kind of like, oh, well, I can definitely relate to them, or I can definitely find a reason to like them. No, I just didn't like it. It was very hard for me to, get hooked onto the story, and it's very hard for me to really like some of these characters. I mean, they has a couple jump scares here and there, but honestly, there's just not too much really redeeming for it. Alright, number 1, the worst movie I have seen this year, the one movie where I literally almost walked out of it, is Slender Man. Okay, so, back in the day, and I'm talking maybe like 10, 12 years ago, somewhere around that time, they had this whole creepypasta deal, whether it was a story or whether it was a game, about this creepy, I'm trying to think of what, like, the worst word, like deity, I guess you could say, this creepy creature known as Slenderman, who has no face, he's always wearing a suit, he's got these tentacles apparently, and when I saw a lot of these Slender Man movies, I mean, there was one where literally it was just a found footage deal. I thought, this was stupid. There's no way that it could get worse. It got worse with this movie. Motivations are just completely out of whack. The storyline is a complete mess. The characters are not only unlikable, but if you listen to Agent Cooper's deal, he mentions the fact that it is too hard to like these characters because they're so dull. They're not exciting. They're literally, it's almost like taking a Kristen Stewart performance on Twilight, and you have literally this going on. It's like so emotionless, so hard to like these characters, that they changed so much of the aspect of what Slenderman was halfway through the movie. Oh, he's a demon, he's a curse, he is this, he's this, he's this. There's so much things about it where it's like, you're losing the point of what Slenderman was all about. Honestly, if I was to write Slenderman right now, I would have it be like this. Remember how in the game they basically have to find these pages? Let that be the deal. If you can find all the pages, you survive Slenderman and he leaves you alone. That is how you beat him. It's almost like for him, this is a game. That is one of the most deadly things you could do. When you have something that is taking a game and make it into some sick, twisted fantasy of theirs, then you know you have something just absolutely demonic. But the fact that they didn't have something like that, the fact that they made Slenderman just a complete, I'm trying to find the right word for it, just a complete joke. There we go. That's the perfect word. Because apparently he lives in the trees. He's almost like the Lorax, apparently. He grabs his victims, tentacle, wraps them up, sucks them into the trees. Just makes absolutely no sense. Because that was never what it was all about. What the absolute what? Slenderman was the worst movie, and like I said, halfway through, I was like, I'm just going to leave, but then I thought, you know what, we're already halfway through this, we might as well just finish it up. And did I get what I wanted for the rest of the movie? Nope. I literally thought to myself, this was basically the worst, almost 2 hours. 2 hours too freaking long to watch this movie. I just, I hate everything about this movie. I hate it. I don't want a sequel to it. I would much rather watch paint dry while my feet were glued in cement and literally having a child taking a paddle ball and just bouncing it on my head. I will take that over a Slenderman 2 movie. That is how much I hate it. But, as I mentioned before, there's more positives than negatives about this. Now, obviously, I can't go into full details about a lot of these positive movies, so I'm going to try and briefly touch base about them before I get into my top 10 best movies of this year. So bear with me, guys. It is going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride, but it's also going to be a wild ride. So let's just dive right into them. Starting off with, I don't even have a number for these ones, so these are kind of like my long list of honorable mentions. Like I said, I'm only going to touch base on them just a little bit, but they are still really good movies nonetheless. Honestly, first one that's on my list here is The Grinch. A lot of people might disagree with me on this. I still found enough reasons to like this movie. It is based off of the Dr. Seuss deal. It's from the studio that brought the Minions. I know that already makes it sound bad, but it features, Benedict Cumberbatch. It features, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think if you're, Kenan Thompson, I believe it is. It features Mrs. Potts from Beauty and the Beast in this movie. There's so many familiar voices, so many familiar people in this movie. Like I said, Benedict Cumberbatch is the Grinch. It's just, some of the parts here and there are just kind of out there. But it's one of those movies where it's like, hey, we as adults have the Jim Carrey version. Kids have this version. And that's not a bad thing. They're on the same level. Honestly, I'll do a deal next month about which one is better between the three of them and why that is. But I'll get into that later. Next one on the list is Annihilation. This was one of those movies that I have a hard time describing what this movie was all about, because I went into it with no expectations, and I left with a lot of questions going through my head, because I understood the premise, I understood the characters, I understood that this, I guess, supernatural creation is down, and it's doing this deal where it's creating something different with the world that it's surrounding. It's one of those things where it's just interesting, and it leaves me with more questions, and I really couldn't figure out a reason to hate it, but I really couldn't figure out a reason to fully love it. It wasn't one of those movies where it's just like, what do I really think about it? I'm still thinking of that question, because there's so many good things about this movie, there's some bad things about this movie, but all around, it's still one of those movies that makes me think, and that's one of the things that is brilliant about movies. If it can make you think after you've seen it, then it's doing a damn good job. The special effects are great, and I loved the performances by Natalie Portman especially. It was a good movie. Hereditary. So this is one of those movies that I was going to put on my worst of the year, but I understood now why people are really enjoying this movie. It is a different kind of horror movie. It is a little bit misleading, because you might think that the girl is going to be the main focus on this movie. Spoiler alert, she dies halfway through it. And it's more focused on the son and on the mother. It's kind of a very interesting deal. Deals with a lot of demonic possessions and rituals and stuff like that. It's just a very interesting movie. Honestly, it does get creepy every now and then. It kind of gives you like the heebie-jeebies, the goosebumps, even in the most uncomfortable way. But it still does its job. It does a good job of it. Alright, next we have Paul, Apostle of Christ. So this was kind of a spin-off from the Passion of the Christ deal. It still featured the main actor from Passion of the Christ. It's one of those movies where it talks about, Paul himself. It's still a good movie. I just think that they kind of watered it down immensely compared to what happened with Passion of the Christ, where they obviously went just completely mental with it. Where, you had blood and guts and gore and stuff like that, where it did make it a more powerful message. With this one, it did feel like they watered it down just a little bit. I think that if they would have kept some of the stuff, some of the violence in there, it probably would have had a bigger impact. But it was still a good movie. It still delivered the same message that a lot of people would expect. It just was one of those movies where it was like, sometimes more is better. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Obviously, a lot of people have been making fun of this movie because of the fact that it is literally like Lost World Jurassic Park. I still found enough reasons to enjoy it. I still loved watching the dinosaurs. I liked watching, seeing Blueback. I loved Chris Pratt, his role. It's just one of those movies I can't really say that I hate, but I can't really say I love. I like it. It's not a bad movie. It's just, every now and then you're kind of looking at it like, why did they do this? Well, why did they do this? Why did they do this? Why is this character involved in this? I don't understand it. It was really weird. But, like I said, I like it. The Meg. This was a movie I was very skeptical about to start off, because the first trailer I see Features that song, somewhere beyond the streets, somewhere waiting for me. And the first thing that went to my mind is, oh god, they're going to make it into like a full-fledged comedy, aren't they? Great. You're literally taking Jaws and making it into a joke. As soon as I saw this movie, I was like, wow, I was so sorely mistaken. I loved Jason Statham as his character. He had a lot of pretty good lines. His character development was really good. The characters were likable. It also features Dwight from The Office, which I thought was really cool. He kind of plays a little bit of like a billionaire deal, but he does a fantastic job. A lot of the other characters that are involved. I thought that the whole deal with the Megalodon was great. Spoiler, they had 2 involved in there, which made things very more interesting. It was just a fun little movie. Storyline wise, maybe I get a little janky, but the characters were really good and the acting was very, very spot on. I liked it. Rampage. What more do I really need to say than a bunch of monumental creatures? A flying wolf, a giant crocodile, a huge gorilla, Dwayne Johnson, and Negan from The Walking Dead. There's literally not much more I could say. A lot of people say it's a really spot-on movie because it definitely works with the content that the game had. It's just a really good movie. I frankly enjoyed it. It was a good movie, and I think that this was one of those movies that a lot of people are really talking about next to Skyscraper that featured The Rock. So, really cool to see that. A Simple Favor. Alright, I will say this. This is literally Mrs. Deadpool and Anna Kendricks from Pitch Perfect. So you have Blake Lively really having like this attitude, and she's kind of a badass. It was actually one of those things that I really enjoyed. Her personality mixed in with the awkward shyness that Anna Kendricks has. It made for a really good movie. Throughout the story, it's really good. I found enough reasons to really enjoy it. It was one of those movies that I thought, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Sure, the ending gets to be a little bit sloppy. I'm not going to spoil that for you. But it's definitely one of those movies that, for the most part, it has a good story to it. So that's one of the reasons why I loved it. You can understand some of the motivations. You understand some of the character choices. It's just really good. Searching. Oh, my Lord. John Cho, you put on a really good performance with this movie. It's one of the first few times that you've had those like lost footage deals, and you have them, being threaded together in a storyline, and not only does it make sense, not only does it feel real, but it gets you invested. It's that good. There comes a point where, spoiler alert, we think that John Cho's daughter is dead, but in the end she survives. It's one of those movies that it just keeps you going, and it keeps you going, and it keeps you invested all the way to the end. And that's one of the greatest things about these movies, is that if it can keep you, from not being bored, if it can keep you from being just invested, if it can keep you just going throughout the entire movie, and, you have those emotions invested in this movie, it's great. It's absolutely wonderful. I love this movie. Black Klansman. So this was one of those movies that, again, I was a little hesitant about, but I will say this, that I prefer Topher Grace as a bit of an asshole, and he plays that very well. In this version, you have the actor who plays Kylo Ren involved here. Basically, it's a story about a black guy trying to get, trying to figure out, the Ku Klux Klan and get involved with that. But at the end, we also feature a lot of real-life deals that happen within over the years. The Black Lives Matter deals, the neo-Nazis, all these just crazy events and prejudice that is going on in the world. It just connects everything together in the best way. It's just a very well-done movie. And, again, another one I like. Christopher Robin. Okay, I'll admit, mainly I think this is nostalgia for me because I grew up with Winnie the Pooh. And, of course, you have Jim Cummings playing Pooh as well as Tigger. You have different voice actors playing the roles of people like, Eeyore, Kanga, Roo, Piglet, Rabbit, Owl, all these different characters. Ewan McGregor is involved in this, and yes, the storyline is pretty simple, but that's fine. It's a simple kids movie. basically talking about, appreciating family and appreciating the little things. It's a really well done movie. Again, liked it. Maybe it's just for the pure nostalgia, but I liked it. Hellfest. So literally, Agent Cooper and I went into this movie with very minuscule expectations when it came to this. As soon as we left it, holy cow, were our minds blown. Because this is one of those movies that features a horror theme park, a mass murder, and some characters that we actually like and who have actual characteristics and people that we can either relate to or that we can just look at and think, wow, I'm glad that they're alive. A lot of twists, a lot of turns, a lot of really good stuff that's involved in this movie. It's just so very well done, and a huge twist ending with the killer not being credited in the end credit scenes. That's the most insane part, is that they don't mention who this killer is. So now I'm at the point where it's like, I need to see another one of these so that maybe we can see who this person is. I mean, for all we know, it could be Channing Tatum. For all we know, it could be Charlie Sheen. Okay, maybe not Charlie Sheen. Maybe that would be a little too risque. But you know what I mean? It could be anyone. And that's one of the beauties of movies, is that if you keep people guessing, you're going to get them more invested, and they're going to want to come back and see it. It's a very well done movie, and I'm hoping that we get a sequel to it. Halloween. Okay, so you have Michael Myers, check. You have a good storyline, check. Jamie Lee Curtis is a badass, check, check, and triple check. Holy cow, was this movie really good. I enjoyed everything about it. The characters were relatable. Everything was just very well done. They had this little tiny detail involved in there that actually does play out, especially when you listen to the end credits. It's a very well done movie. And I'm glad that they made this kind of like the sequel to the original instead of what we got probably years prior. Ant-Man and the Wasp. So this was the movie that Ant-Man needed to stick around. Paul Rudd definitely shines very much in this movie. Evelyn Lilly, she's great in this movie. For a woman of her age, a lot of people are going to be surprised to see how well she can go and how well she can act. I mean, there's Michael Douglas. What more can I say? It's Michael Douglas. He's amazing. Michelle Pfeiffer, who is making the jump from DC to Marvel, and she does a fantastic job of doing it. There's just a lot of really good deals in here. Comedy, action, you get invested, and it also features a scene that ties into one of the top 5 movies that I have on my list, but I'm going to save that for just a little bit later. Venom. I sorely, sorely wanted this movie to be in my top 10, but there were just so many other movies that I knew were going to beat this. Venom, I loved it because of the fact that Tom Hardy played Eddie Brock pretty well. He played Venom very well. The story was pretty good. I loved the battle sequences. I loved the whole aspect of what the symbiote was. They really explained it more. They explained his strengths. They explained his weaknesses. It's just very well done. And of course, at the end, we get to see Woody Harrelson, even though he's in a Ronald McDonald wig. I don't care. I'm one of those people that's literally looking at this thinking, oh my god, we are getting Carnage. I don't care if he looks like he's got Marge Simpson hair for all we care. We're getting Carnage. And it's with a guy who literally could be taken as a serious threat to Tom Hardy. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be really good. Game night. So, okay, I'll be honest about this movie. I literally walked into this thinking, well, I mean, the best part about this is probably going to be Rachel McAdams, and I mean, if I hate this movie, it's just going to be one of those things where it's probably going to end up being like, date night or something like that. One of those things where, they have fill in the blank night. Well, this is game night. Great. This will be just freaking perfect. And honestly, it was a better movie than I ever gave credit for. Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman are really good. They have really good chemistry on the screen together. And just, it's a story about game night going wrong. It's funny. It's emotional. It's a very well done, very thought out movie. I loved it. And if we got a sequel to it, I would be okay with it. I think that this is one of those movies where I feel like it could be left alone, but you know something? At the same time, I kind of want to see more of Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman in more movies like this. That's just me. All right, next up is Blockers, which I will definitely say is my comedy vote for 2018 as best in the year because of the fact that it is very well done. You basically have three different types of parents. You have Leslie Ham, who is a mother who is always just, trying her hardest to be there for her daughter anytime, anywhere. She's literally, trying to be, it's almost like they're so close. They're not only like mother-daughter, it's like sister-sister, trying to keep it like that. You have John Cena, who is an overprotective, but also very, very scared, skittish kind of father. Does a fantastic job at that. And then you have Ike Barinholtz, who I loved in Mad TV. He is basically the deadbeat dad that really comes around and finally becomes a true father that he wants to be in the end. It's just very well done. I love the chemistry between the kids. I love the chemistry between the adults. It's just a very well done movie. And it goes through a lot of the issues that a lot of people go through. So what's there not to like about it? Deadpool 2. I know, this is kind of a shock that it's not in my top 10, but there are other movies that kind of beat it. I'm sorry. But Deadpool 2, I loved it, and I'm enjoying the fact that this is the movie we got before Once Upon a Deadpool, because you have to remember that even though it's going to be PG-13, you guys, we still get Ryan Reynolds, and he's still going to find a way to make it just an absolutely laugh riot, as well as a fantastic performance for Deadpool. You just know he's going to. I love the story about this. I love the fact that they have all of these, new heroes, some new villains. They bring in Juggernaut in this. And honestly, guys, I cannot explain to you how much that it just melts my heart hearing Yukio and Wade just saying hi to each other. It drives me insane, but it does it in such the best way. It's so cute and adorable, but also weird because she's young and he's old. It's just... It's weird. I think I have a problem. It's a good movie, though. Alright, next up is Ralph Breaks the Internet. I recently just saw this movie, and honestly, this exceeded my original expectations, because I thought it was going to be really good. This was damn good. I loved the fact that they incorporated so many social media deals, like Facebook and Twitter. They kind of made it seem like, oh, this is how, we see the, auto type deal going in. This is how we see somebody going from one section of the internet to another. We see how eBay works. This is how this works. This is how blah, 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 blah. It's just very well done. I loved it. I love the fact that Disney could, take themselves seriously somewhat with their Disney princesses, but also still had fun with it. It was just really cool to see that. And to be honest, guys, this is one of the few times I was not expecting Stan Lee to make an appearance in a Disney movie, but I loved it. One of the reasons why I'm owning it. It's just so good. And finally, guys, the final honorable mention on here is Incredibles 2. One of the things I really loved about this movie is the fact that they took time at the beginning to say, hey, we know it took so long for us to make this movie, but you have to understand we wanted to make it the best that we had. We didn't want it to be just one of those things we just created, slapped it together, boom, there it is. No, they wanted to make everything perfect. They wanted to make the CGI perfect. They wanted to make the storyline perfect. They wanted to make everything really good. And it was amazing. Everything from learning about, Jack's powers, just tremendously doing stuff, to having a, female antagonist basically involved with this, because really you see more of Elastigirl in this movie than Mr. Incredible, which is really cool to see, because not very many people got to see Elastigirl at her best, and she shows herself in the best way in this movie. It's really great to see. I loved it. All right. Now I can get into what were my top 10 favorite movies of this year. And of course, this is subjective, but also just remember the fact that I own a podcast, so if you don't like it, well then, na boo boo, stick your head in doo doo. So let's just dive right into it, guys. At number 10, Bad Times at El Royale. First of all, we do not deserve a gem like Jeff Bridges. I'm just saying that right off the bat. He does a fantastic job in this movie because he is a bit of the center of the attention, but they also do this deal where they give time to a lot of the characters so that you can kind of see them develop and you can see them, what their motivations are. You can see what they're about. It's just very well done. I liked it. I loved it. I also loved the fact that this is one of those movies where it gave me a different light to see Dakota Johnson, because throughout the most part, I thought that she was mainly just a part of the 50 Shades deal, and I apologize so much to Dakota Johnson for that, for not giving her the due credit that she deserves. She does a fantastic job in here. Plus, Chris Hemsworth, oh my lord! He's basically playing a Charles Manson deal, and it's so well done. Just, can we get more of that? I would love that to be just, he does the cult thing so well. It's scary, but it's so very good. It's phenomenal performance. I really love this movie. The storyline definitely feels a lot like Cabin in the Woods. You have a deal where, of course, they find out that they're all being watched, but you never really find out by who or by what. It's just one of those things where it's a big mystery, but it's such a very well-told story. All the actors should be very proud, and honestly, everybody who worked on that movie should be proud. Spot on, you guys. You did a fantastic job. Alright, we move on to the number 9 movie, Love, Simon. So originally when I saw this movie, I thought of it more as a comedy. And that was my mistake. I went into this movie because I saw, Hannah from, 13 Reasons Why. I saw a funny scene where they're talking about, how come straight people can't, come out too? And there's just that one scene where the mother just breaks down and she's going, "Oh, help me, Jesus!" It was so funny. But then after I watched this movie, it's one of those things where it's like, I understand more the pain of somebody who has to go through that, because it's not easy to admit that, because you have family, you have friends that have you at like a high standard, or they think of you as this person. You want to tell them the truth about yourself, but you're worried about how they're going to react. And honestly, it does a really good job of doing that. It's not perfect. It's not one of those things where you're just going to expect people to be like, "Oh, hey, yeah, it's cool, it's cool." It's like, no, there's trials, there's tribulations to try and not only hide the secret, but also to really, sink in what Simon had to go through. It's one of those movies. It does a fantastic job of doing that. And fortunately for his story, it had a happy ending. For most of them, it usually doesn't. It really doesn't. So I'm really glad that I saw this movie, and I have a better appreciation for it. It's just a very well told story. Alright, so we go into number 8, which is Ready Player One. Oh, we're starting to get into the stuff that's going to give me goosebumps. This was one of those movies. Oh man, Ready Player One. What can I say about this? Basically, imagine every single video game that you can imagine just created into this. You add a little bit of classic movies, you add a little bit of gamer knowledge, and just everything that goes on to it. It's just, this is such a good movie. I remember just watching it and thinking, this is a damn good movie. I watched it for the second time. I still had nostalgia for it because you had, characters that you were familiar with. You had people that were, you're like stormtroopers, or they were just random characters that you were familiar with, like the Ninja Turtles, like the Halo people. So many of these really very well done video game characters brought to life in there. And who could ever forget the scene where literally this person has a Chucky doll that can kill everybody, and they just toss it out to the bad guys, and the person just goes, "It's fucking Chucky." Oh man, that was such a good moment. It's such a good movie. I'm in love with it again. That just hits the gamer part of me so well. Love the characters, love the CGI animation. Just, it's beautiful. Just beautiful. We are on to number 7, which is Crazy Rich Asians. This was one of those movies that really got high reviews, and I was thinking, okay, well, I need to figure out why that is. I need to see for myself if it's really worth watching. And it is, because you not only have, a better appreciation for the Asian culture, but you also kind of get an idea as to what, it's like. It's one of those movies where it's a familiar story of basically a mother saying, no, I would rather you didn't marry this person. I would rather you, come back and live with the family and blah, 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 stuff like that. It's one of those things where it's a very well-told story, but they add traditions and they add culture aspects. They add so much to this deal, and just everything that they do, including, oh my God, one of the wedding scenes, my goodness, just, that is just a beautiful scene where literally, they have, like, the aisle is like a pond or like a lake or something like that, and the bride is coming down looking beautiful, and she has like these leggings like she's a mermaid. It's so very well done. The story is so very well told, and it has like twists and turns, stuff that you would not even expect. I loved it. The characters were all very well developed. It had the right amount of conflict. It had the right amount of romance. It's just very well told. I loved it. And I know a lot of people were complaining, like, oh, this is not a true Asian. This is not a true Asian. As long as they're basically, upholding to the culture and being good representatives, I don't care. I'd much rather they be, doing their best to honor tradition and honor these culture experiences than just have them, half-ass it. No, they went full on with this. I can definitely tell. And I loved it. Oh, speaking of love, we go into number 6. Oh, man, this movie. I Can Only Imagine. This one is definitely one that hits the Christian part of me, because you definitely do get a better appreciation for the song I Can Only Imagine. It's just a very well-told story about how this guy has to go through, trials, tribulations, not only with trying to become a famous musician, a famous singer, but also it's just testing his faith and testing his life, testing his limits, everything that he goes through, even getting to the point where he's trying to figure out, should I forgive my dad? Should I even let him back into my life? Oh man, those, I would say 3 minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10. I'm trying to think of the exact minutes, but the moments where you see the rekindling relationship between father and son is one of the most beautiful things, even at the very final stages. It just, oh my gosh, it hits me so hard. And I will say this, that I do recall watching this movie and getting into a really good scene, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to stay strong, I'm going to stay strong. I look over, I'm watching with my parents, and I definitely see my mother just tearing up, and she's crying. She's like, I'm okay. 10 seconds later, I am literally bawling my eyes out, because it is just such a very well done movie. It's really good. It's very, very powerful. And it talks about a very strong song that really does ask the question and really paint the scene, of what happens on Judgment Day. What happens when this happens? Will you stand in the glory? Will you sing to him? Will you dance for him? Will you do these things to honor him? Or will you stand with him with your faith and with your love for him? It's just a very well told story. I loved it. We move on to the top 5 best movies I've seen this year, guys. At number 5, we have Bohemian Rhapsody. I know when I did the review, I had some, I don't know if I would say controversial things to say about this movie, but definitely not some good points, as my co-host Victory Bell definitely hit on the fact that this was a really well done movie. And it was. It talks about the the rise, the sort of fall of Freddie Mercury, the trials, tribulations that he has to go through his life, a lot of the struggles that he had to not only stay famous, but also to basically try keep his social life. And he just, it tells a very good story. It's very well done. And guys, how is it that they were able to make everybody there look exactly like these people? Raimi looked exactly like Freddie Mercury. A lot of the other people from Queen looked exactly like them. It was like they had a cloning machine that they just randomly decided to dig up. Like, hey, look what we got here. They were able to just clone every single person. They looked exactly like them. It was scary, and they did the whole, live for. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was that benefits concert for like HIV or something like that. For it was either HIV or AIDS. I'm trying to remember what it was. But it was one of those things where they tried to recreate that, spot for spot in exactly that detail. That shows you the amount of respect that they had for Freddie Mercury's career, but also for Queen. That is awesome. That is just absolutely awesome. Definitely a movie that deserves a lot of the credit, a lot of the fame, and a lot of the money that it gets. It's very well done. Going to number 4, and that is A Star is Born. Bradley Cooper directing for the first time, having him featured in it, it's like, okay, I guess that's how you do it. But it's one of those movies that is a remake about the original. Because I think if I remember correctly, this was the second remake they made of an original that came out, I think, in 1957, and then there was one that came out in 1920s or something like that. It's one of those movies that it's been remade for the third time. And honestly, the chemistry between Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga is just astonishing. It's almost beyond words how well these guys just, click. How well these guys just work very well together. It talks of a story about these two people trying to find their way and that they're at their most happy with each other. And there's some points where they do deal with the struggles of fame. They do deal with the struggles of change. It's a very well thought out story. Just absolutely wonderful. It has a very tragic ending, but it's still very well done. It's just, wow. I cannot even begin to describe how well it is. The songs are really fun to listen to jam out to. Like I said, you kind of wish you had the relationship that, that Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga's characters had, minus a lot of the problems that are indeed, featured in this. But it's just very well done. It's a very well done, very well thought out story. Definitely really cool. Now we're getting into the top 3. Oh boy, these 3 were so hard to rank, but I think I did them justice. And just remember that this is my list. Number 3 is Infinity War. Absolutely love this movie. I've seen it 3 times, and every single time I've seen it, it is just as good as the last. I take that back. I've seen it 4 times. You have the first time ever so many assortment of Marvel characters, from Spider-Man to not Captain Marvel. She's featured in the next one. Iron Man, Doctor Strange, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Wakanda. So many big-time characters all coming to this huge stage. And this was something that Stan Lee had envisioned for years. And it was an ultimate payoff so well, and it was so loved, you guys, that it made $2 billion, making it one of the highest grossing movies of all time. So very well loved, so very well sought for. It's one of those movies that people have enjoyed and will continue to enjoy for years to come. And honestly, guys, it is one of those movies that just really is going to make us anticipate what is going to happen with Avengers 5. Is it Avengers 5 or is it Avengers 4 now that I think about it? No, it's Avengers. It's Avengers 4 now. Now that I think about it. But it's going to be one of those things where we're looking forward to what happens. There's going to be a lot of exhibition that they're going to have to deal with. There's a lot of new heroes that they're going to have to introduce the best way. You have to develop them right. It's one of those movies that we are just highly anticipated for, because we've got the first book here with Infinity War, and the final chapters in this phase, you could say, is going to be written next year in 2019, when we have that final, confrontation between the Avengers and Thanos. It's going to be very well done. At number 2, we have Black Panther. This was a movie that started off the year in the right way. Honestly, guys, I look at my list, it is the first movie this year that got a thumbs up. It was a very well told story. You imagine Marvel being owned by Disney deciding, let's take Black Panther, let's not only add it, almost basically have it be like one of our original greatest movies of all time, but also add, again, culture to it. You have Black Panther, which is like a combination of so many African traditions and cultures. Then you combine that with the Lion King aspect of it. It's a very well done movie. It's one of the highest grossing movies in Marvel. It really is. One of those solo movies that a lot of people really enjoyed because of the fact that it tells a damn good story about this guy, battling for his kingdom. He's battling for his people. He's battling to keep everybody safe, and he's doing everything right. A slew of characters that just do a fantastic job of really creating this memorable place called Wakanda, and also creating just an absolutely phenomenal movie in Black Panther. I'm looking forward to when they make another one. Also, there was a rumor that the women of Wakanda might even have their own spin-off movie, which I am totally for, because I look at all the women that are there, I think to myself, oh my gosh, that would be amazing, just to kind of see what their lifestyle is kind of like, what maybe, traditions they have to uphold, or maybe the traditions that they are overcoming, something like that. Just so much good stuff that you could do with that, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. Oh man, that brings me to my number 1. My favorite movie of this year was A Quiet Place. Much like Shape of Water, this is one of those movies where you don't need a lot of talking. You don't need a long dialogue. You don't need to have just, long speeches. You don't need to have all that. All you need is the action. And this is what this movie is all about, is action, action, action. Body movement tells the story. Facial expressions tell the story. Complete silence tells the story. And you are so used to hearing people just talking and people just talking that, when you hear a long pause, you're expecting something bad to happen. In this movie, there's more long pauses. So it's literally like, you don't know if something weird is going to happen or something scary is going to happen, right here. Or you don't know if it's going to happen right here. You don't know if it's going to happen here, 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 here. They talk in sign language. It's beautifully done. It's so well executed. Jim is the stars in this from The Office, and he also directed this, and he did a fantastic job. And I think it was about a month after people were watching it, they announced, hey, we're going to do a sequel of it. And all I'm thinking to myself is, I want that. I really do. Because now you're kind of interested in seeing where it goes from there. You're kind of interested in seeing what happens after all the events that happened during this deal. And you also developed a story here to where you, again, appreciate family. And you really show the love that you have for family. It's a very well-told story. And, definitely, if you're in your final... It's one of those things where it hits me definitely emotionally, because every single time, even when I'm in my final breaths, I think to myself, I don't want my family to ever think that I don't love them. That is the one thing that always stood out. A lot of these movies do a great job of, is that whenever somebody passes, the last thing that they will usually say is, that, to either stay strong, basically giving them last minute advice, or just telling them, that they love them. I mean, honestly, one of the most heartfelt scenes in Disney is the scene where Kerchak is, he's dying, and he literally doesn't have to say "I love you" to Tarzan, but he is finally acknowledging him as his son. He literally just says, "You will take care of them now. Take care of them, my son." It's so very well done, and that's, again, one of those moments in this movie where it feels like the person, he knows he's going to die, and he's willing to sacrifice himself for it, but he wants his family to know that, hey, I never stop loving you. I will always love you. It's just very well done. Again, loved it. Wow, what a rush. I mean, so many movies to talk about, and I tried very hard, like I said, to just give my honest opinions about them, keep them brief if I could, but there's so many great movies that I could just absolutely talk about. And like I said, this was a personal record for me to go through so many of these different movies and to appreciate them all in a different limelight. Even some of the movies that I hate, there were some that I just thought, okay, I can appreciate the fact that they did an effort, even though their effort was probably, sucky or really poorly played out. Well, okay, maybe except for a few that I really hated. There's some where it's like, hey, I understand what you're trying to do. I understand where you're coming from. It's just, it didn't work out. But with that being said, that has been my review for 2018's best and worst as far as movies go, guys. I'll be talking more about wrestling in December, as well as talking about the 12 fantasy booking days that I will be doing for the podcast. It's going to be an absolutely electric deal. So many different suggestions that I've had from people, so many different suggestions that I will be doing, and I'm looking forward to, starting next week. I'm going to start trying to, do some recordings and do some writings, getting some of this stuff ready to go, so that way I am ready to, present you guys with some of the best fantasy bookings that I can provide for you. So, with that being said, I've been Nate the Effing Great. You know where to find me on Facebook. You know where to find me on Twitter. Definitely look in the comment section, to find out more about the Game Changer. And guys, that's going to wrap it up for me. So enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend, and by all means, tell your family that you love them and that you appreciate them very much. Definitely don't let that be the one thing that you forget to do. That is the most important thing that you can do in life. Let your family know that you love them, and let them know how much they mean to you. I'm Nate the Effing Great for the Game Changer, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.